for Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about this author, Phyllis Campbell. The title of her book, Going Home. Now you know what I'm going to ask you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Phyllis. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. Now, I love the title of your book. I'm a very nostalgic type of person, so anytime we get to talk about going home, the title of your book, but physically going home is always such a beautiful thing. But before we do that, there may be one or two listeners out there that are unfamiliar with who you are or with your book. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are? So what makes Phyllis Phyllis?
I was born in Amherst County, Virginia, which is a small rural area that does feature in a lot of my writing. There are actually two books with this. One is the first one in the sequel called Where Sheep May Safely Graze, and then the second one is Going Home. I have always thought that writers had to have something to say. You see writers that they write, but they have nothing to say. I'm totally blind. I've been totally blind since birth. And I feel that in a way it's a mission for me to tell other people what my world is like. And I have found that this does inspire people who are losing their sight, people who may already have lost their sight, relatives and friends of these people, because people fear blindness, I think, more than any so-called disability there is. They have this almost primitive fear. And if I can, through fiction, show people what the lives of these people could and should be like, then I feel that I have accomplished something. I feel that I have justified all the years that I've spent perfecting my writing. And nothing pleases me more than for someone to say, I read your book and then I passed it on to someone who is losing her sight. Not long ago, I went to get my hair done, and a woman came over and said that she had bought a copy of my book and read it to her sister, who can no longer see well enough to read for herself. And that thrilled me because she said that this was the first book, and she recently bought the second one, of course, Going Home. So this is a bit about me. I've often wondered if I would be the same personality if I could see. And I'm not sure. I can never quite answer that. Perhaps when people read my work or hear me speak, they can decide. God has always moved in my life. He's been a part of my life since I was a tiny child. One of the first things that I can remember was my older sister teaching me to pray the Lord's Prayer. And that has been what has followed me all the way through my life, is the last part, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And especially, of course, the thy will be done. And that is as much as I know at this point to tell you about me.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. Now, as a native Virginian myself, I am always happy to have on a fellow Virginian. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And I like how you pose that question. Would you be the person that you are today if you were born sighted. And I think that with all of our ups and downs and rounds that we experience in life, I think they help us to be the best version of us that we can be when we, like you have, share the lessons that we learn along the way. Because, boy, I'm sure there are so many people who have their sight and still are blinded by the things around them and don't utilize their abilities accordingly.
Oh, this is so true.
Yes, yes. I think that you're really going to help someone today, perhaps get unstuck from where they are. Now, being an author, I know that for many people, that's something that they've wanted to do since they were a little child. Others, they kind of got bitten by the writing bug in college. When did you realize that not only were your words powerful in the verbal sense, but that if you put them to paper and shared them with everyone else, that folks could have this aha moment with you?
I think I knew for years, subconsciously, that I was going to be a writer. My fourth grade teacher told my mother, Phyllis is going to be a writer. And I said, Mama, Miss Davis just can't possibly be right. And I did win a contest when I was still in school. I was competing against students in all the schools in the state of Virginia in a conservation contest. And I won an honorable mention, which to me was just absolutely great to think that I could win against all these kids all over the state.
Mm-hmm. I love how, as young people, and so many people have said this along the way, that when you're a young person and you win something, it really has the ability to give you the fuel that you need to keep going because you like how winning feels, no matter if it's an honorable mention, second place, first place, or just an opportunity to come up on stage. For some people, and it sounds like it happened with you, it really gets you going. It propels you to the next level. So I love that. What a great note for someone who may have some children that are being called up on stage and being recognized for what they're doing. Don't squash that. Let that continue to shine. I love it. Now, the title of your book, Going Home, I like that title. How did you come about such an interesting title for your book?
Well, actually, the title, Going Home, is a piece by Dvorak from the New World Symphony. Da dee dee dum dee dee. People are very familiar with that. But the inspiration from that I got was from a country music song. I expect a lot of your listeners are familiar with this, especially those in the South. It's called The Green, Green Grass of Home, and the song deals with a prisoner who was going to be executed at dawn, and he dreamed that he was going home. He dreamed he saw his father and his mother and his old house and the old oak tree that he played on. And of course, then he woke up and the padre was waiting to walk him to the execution, and he realized that what he'd been experienced was only a dream. And the wellspring of this book is a convict, a prisoner who committed a horrible act. He completely blew away with a shotgun a preschool back 50 years earlier, and he was dying, and they cut him loose from the prison system, which they often do, and he returned to his little town where he had committed this, and oh my, that little town just went berserk, and the person mostly having to deal with it was the pastor, Jim, and his wife, Amy. And Jim is blinded in the first book, which is called Where Sheep May Safely Graze. And he went as a minister to this little town, and he and his wife were stuck. They were trying to bring to terms their own feeling about forgiveness with this man and understanding the people 50 years earlier, who had known what happened and who naturally resented him.
Mm-hmm. Such an intriguing story. I think what I like most about it is that you're able to not only go along on the journey with you of the picture that you have painted, but for many people, they know that this has happened to someone, or they've heard a story of it happening in perhaps their parents' generation or their grandparents' generation. Something happened, and it's like, ooh, really? So it really does pique your interest there and makes you want to read even more. Now, who do you think that the ideal reader of your book would be? Did you have a particular audience in mind? Should we say
in a way yes, and in a way no? I'm seeing quite a wide audience for, both of these titles that go one into the other, actually. Older people have read it and enjoyed it. Young people, young adults especially, and I think young women who can empathize with Amy and her work with her husband, her blind husband, Jim. It starts out where this cat was up in a tree, and Jim decided he was going to climb up and get the cat. And, of course, she was so frightened, she kept thinking, oh, Jim, you might fall. But she wanted to keep him confident, so she didn't dare say a word. And I'll tell you just this intriguing thing. He got up and got hold of the cat by the tail, and the cat leaped down the tree by herself, and they discovered it wasn't their cat at all. It was a cat that looked like theirs to Amy. So
I tell you, that is so funny. I've seen some of these adventures of people trying to save the cat from the tree, and it is heartwarming, but it is also entertaining because I tell you, kitties kind of have a mind of their own. They
absolutely. I actually, if I could digress just a minute, I actually had this same kind of experience. A delivery man told me he had let my cat out, and he chased that poor cat all the way to the next corner and grabbed her, and he brought her back, and he said, little lady, now don't you worry, I've got your little cat. Hold your arms out. And I held out my arms, and he put this cat in my arms, and I said, but sir, that isn't my cat.
His heart was in the right place.
Well, she was quite happily residing under the kitchen table on a chair. So
no, poor kitty. She's like, why am I being captured? I didn't even know.
So this poor cat, and Lady Grey was just lying there under the table watching the fun.
I tell you, I could only imagine if I could have witnessed that. It's like, oh well, there he goes. He's trying. I tell you, it is so nice that people try, and cats are so elusive. It is a funny thing.
It was quite funny. So I'm actually, I think, like every writer, little experiences we have ourselves, they may change, as this one did. The cat was in a tree, but the point is, I think we weave little memories and parts of ourselves into our writing.
Absolutely. And I think that most people probably enjoy that because it does make you feel as though you get to know the author or that you have some familiarity with them. It kind of bonds you to the author. I love it. Well, Miss Phyllis, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, could you please remind everyone of the title of your book, where we can get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
The title of the book is Going Home. It's available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and a couple other places. You can reach me by www.phylliscampbell.author, all lowercase, .com.
I love it. Alrighty, listeners, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Phyllis Campbell, and we're talking about her book, Going Home. Now, Miss Phyllis, my next question for you is about the relevance. We always try to make sure that any product or service that we offer is relevant to the needs of our clients, of our guests, of our listeners, our readers. So my question to you is, do you think that the book is relevant or appropriate for everything that's going on in the world today?
In a way, yes, I think it is, because intolerance, to me, is one of the biggest problems that we have today. And certainly it was difficult for them, but the people in this little town, some of them, the younger people especially, were a bit intolerant of this man who had just been released from prison. And I should not say this, and I don't wish to be accused of feeling sorry for myself, because trust me, nobody with God on their side could feel truly sorry for themselves. But unfortunately, sometimes the world is intolerant to people with a disability. It isn't that they mean to be unkind. They just simply don't understand that this person deals with the same problems. They may look different. They may take a different form. But I deal with the same problems. I have recently been ill. And in other words, I deal with the same tests, the same things that everyone else does. Only sometimes they forget to tell the technician that I'm blind, and she will say, now, if you could move over there on the table. Yeah, but where is over there? In other words, everybody else has to endure that same test. But my problem with that same test may be slightly different. Does this make sense?
It does. It does. And I think you're right. I think people do forget and or take things for granted.
They do, and it's not intentional. Well, once, and here again, this weaves into my writing, I had a neighbor leave me at the drugstore. She went to the front to pick up something, and I said, it's crowded up there, I'll stay here and you come back and get me. And Betty Sue walked out of the other door and was halfway home walking when she suddenly realized, my goodness, I left Phyllis.
Oh my goodness. I'm glad that she remembered and came back for you. But oh my goodness.
Well, I would have had the pharmacist call and tell her, would you please come and get me, Betty? I'm waiting.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, you know, my mother has had a similar situation, different ailment. She had a sister that suffered from dementia, and she kind of did the same. She walked off, simply forgetting that she was with a group, thinking that she was by herself.
God bless her.
And we just had to walk around, and we quietly
until you found her.
And it was just like, she's in the store, we hope, and we were able to find her. But it was just sometimes people just forget. So, yeah, you go, well, thank God everyone in the area knew you as they did my aunt. So it was familiar territory, which is a good thing. But for a moment there, it could be kind of scary. So
It
after,
can be frightening, and it can be embarrassing if you let it be. I learned years and years and years ago to laugh at myself. And trust me, my dear, if you can't learn to laugh at yourself, you better pray you never lose your sight.
ah, yes. I think that is one of the biggest lessons that we can learn is stop taking ourselves so seriously. That to be able to if you slip and fall, which we all have done, especially when it gets icy that time of
I was
year.
going to say figuratively and literally.
Yeah, if you slip and fall, laugh. Get a good chuckle and just say, well, that reminds me that you'll slip and fall sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is such a good example because you do slip and fall, and people, it frightens people at first. And then if they see you're laughing, if they see you, oh, okay, if she thinks it's funny, I guess it must be.
It
But
must be. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. You are so right. There is such wisdom in that statement that you made. We have to learn to be able to laugh at ourselves. You are so right. So right. Now, one of the questions, Ms. Phyllis, that I always ask my guests that are on is about uniqueness. I have a lot of authors on, and people always say that, what I have to offer is different than everyone else. So I give people an opportunity to explain why they believe that to be true. So my question is, why do you believe that your book is different or unique? What makes your book unique?
my book is unique simply because it does take people into this world of people who have a disability. People like my main character, other than Amy and Jim, who's called Bobby, who wiped out the school. It takes you into the world of someone who has been way down to the bottom and is trying to find his way back. And as I say, it takes you into Jim's world and Amy's world. And then to me, it drops below that level of just looking to see how are they going to handle this. And it drops down into what I call the bottom of humanity, where we really look at the rock bottom of ourselves and at our world. And as you read and if you ponder, you think, gee, that could have happened to me. That could happen to me. And I think that makes my book unique. Also, it is unique in that I see the world of the blind from two standpoints. I see it from my own standpoint, where I've never been able to see with my physical eyes, to the standpoint of the person who may have just lost his or her sight. I have taught both adults. I've done counseling with adults, and I've taught children. I taught music. And I can see it from two big points, and it's based not really on my experience, but as we said, on parts of me are bound to get in there. And I feel that I have a unique message, and I think I was allowed by God to have a different way of seeing this message to put it out to everyone.
Hmm. As you were talking, it made me remember this little snippet of the movie Ray, and he was talking about someone was asking him like, how does he get about? How does he go around town and be okay because he can't see? And he says, you take for granted the way that things sound, and he was explaining how your footsteps sound differently on
Yes, they do.
types of foundations that when you pass by a door, your footsteps sounds differently because it's an open space versus
And you
a
sense
wall.
that open space. Also, I am a church organist, and I think I play as well as my peers who've had the same amount of education that I've had. But you know, sometimes you almost have to prove this to people that, and as you say, I learned where my fingers ought to go. I memorized my music, and my fingers go where they're used to going. And this is another way. We have loads of little tricks, to be absolutely honest with you, like the open space at the door, for instance.
Mm-hmm. I tell you, it is just, I don't think people realize um, that you are still able, you are just able in a different way.
That's
Because
exactly right. That's a wonderful way to put it.
I love it. I love it. You are just sharing so many bits of wisdom for us. And I think that there are going to be some people that the light bulb is really going to go off in their head and say,
I
wow.
hope so. I hope so.
Now, I just have a few more questions for you, and one is about publishing your book. So many times with the process of from writing, getting your ideas down onto paper, so to speak, to holding your book in your hands and having that finished work, that there can be some pros and cons, some highlights or some lowlights to that process. I would like to ask you about your highlights. Did you have any particular part of that process that you thought was just absolutely wonderful, or was it just holding that final copy in your hand that you were like, yes,
Well, I had more of that wonderful feeling with my first book that I sold. This was back in the 80s. Now I still have that thrill, but I still have the thrill of the new book, and then I'm thinking, oh, and what you went through to get this done. When I wrote the first book in this series, my husband had just passed away. And I had been working on the book all the time that he literally was dying over a period of months. And when he passed away, I just sat myself down and I said, you're working on this book. You have an idea for a sequel. Don't sit here and feel sorry for yourself. Get that book finished. And I did. And it was a thrill when I got the first author's copies.
I'm so sorry about the passing of your husband. It's never a good time when you lose a companion, especially someone that you love so dearly. So I do hate to hear about that. But I'm glad that you had your book and that you were able to help that get you through that time period.
And it did. It really did. He would have been very disappointed in me if I hadn't kept going. We were married almost 46 years. And he would have been very disappointed. But it's always a thrill to have a new book released, whether you release it through a traditional publisher or whether you do self-publishing, and they both have their joys.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for saying that, because I think for some authors who are self-published, they may feel as though their work is not as special or as good, or that it's different than...
Well, I've done both. And I had one of my earlier books was published in China. It was translated into Chinese. And that was a thrill. In other words, what I'm saying is that I think this whole writing journey is just that. It's a journey of love and a journey of joy.
I love that. Now, if you would like to share a snippet of your book, you're very much welcome to do that. But I do want to ask you one more question before you share, if you'd like to, and that is about how to read your book. For some people, they make it so that you can start at any particular chapter and read a chapter at a time. Others suggest that you read it from cover to cover to get the full understanding.
I suggest it be read from cover to cover. I think for this particular book, both of these books, it would be more enjoyable and more meaningful. If now, I would love to do a snippet, and I didn't realize that I could. Therefore, I don't have anything put into Braille right now. Now what I often do when I speak is to Braille out maybe part of a chapter and read it. But unfortunately, right now, I don't have anything Brailled.
That is not a problem. So what that means, Miss Phyllis, then is that we'll simply have to have you back on so that you can share with us at a later time, and we will definitely include that snippet of any book that you choose to come on. Perhaps you can come on and talk about the other book that you have.
Oh, I would absolutely love to. This is such an inspiring experience for me.
Thank you. I know that I have enjoyed having you on the program, and any time that we are able to, as I say in the intro, enlighten, inspire, and empower someone, I think that we should always keep that door open. And you are definitely an inspiration. You have shared such nuggets of wisdom with us today. Anytime you want to be back on, you feel free to come back on and visit with me.
I would love to.
Yes, ma'am. Now, before I let you go, if you could please, can you remind everyone of the title of your book? Where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Where Sheep May Safely Graze and Going Home, the main one, which is the last one, available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a few other Christian bookstores. You can reach me with www.phylliscampbellauthor.com.
I love it. Thank you again, Miss Phyllis, for being on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Thank you so much for having me.
And listeners, thank you for spending time with us as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend your time with us here today. Again, we hope that God's grace and mercy will be with you as always. But more importantly, don't you ever forget that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone.